Welcome to the Gamer and the Weeb podcast, the only podcast that hopes Luffy finds the One Piece so people can stop talking about it. I'm your host, Ryan. Here's my co host, Fondio Leo. You can find him on that tag on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, and Twitch. What's going on, dude? What are we talking about today?
So, me and Ryan thought of an idea of a little segment that we will do, every now and then, where we would watch an anime show that we both never seen, and as soon as we're done finish watching it, then we'll talk about it on the podcast, and then tell you our first impressions, what we liked about it, what we disliked about it, the things that they did right, things could have done better in. And there's only one rule in this thing that we're doing. There's only one rule, and the one rule is we can't speak to each other about the anime at all as we're watching it. So I can't be like, "Hey Ryan, did you get this part yet?" No, just nothing. Can't speak of it. Can't even look at it when we're together. So just our first time hearing each other's, our likes and dislikes of the show. And the show that we watched was called Erased, which is I think a 2016 show. Just so you guys don't know that, for sure, if when we make our top 5 openings of anime, hands down that this opening for Erase is gonna be on that top 5 list. Just letting y'all guys know, just a head start, just because it was such an amazing opening.
So you want to read them the little description of it, that way they kind of have a rough idea what it's about.
Well, I didn't open it up, but pretty much what the whole show is about is there's a guy named, I forgot his name already, but the main character, dude, hold on, you know what? Talk about it as I gotta look up this page real quick. So.
All right, I'm just gonna hop on the opening since we already kind of talked about it. The opening is really good, as far as it doesn't. I think it has a good balance of being like this really cool, has a great song, has great visuals opening, and it doesn't spoil too much unless you pay attention. Like you have to really how most openings, there's this big fight between two characters that you'll eventually see later on. It doesn't really have that, but it shows subtle hints to what's going to happen throughout the whole show, like what's happening throughout the mystery. And if something changes in the show, the opening will change. Like there's things that happen that the opening completely changes. Well, it doesn't completely change, but it takes one aspect out of it. And I didn't even notice until Leo pointed it out that hey, oh, did you notice this wasn't in it anymore? And I was like, oh snap! And I had to go back and rewatch it, and they took one thing out, and they did such a good job of keeping it the same but also changing it as the story went on. That's the detail that they put into this. Just the opening was pretty incredible.
All right, so the main guy is called Taro Fujinuma, and pretty much Fujinuma, my bad, and pretty much he has a weird power where if something bad occurs around him, he gets sent back 5 minutes, either a minute or 5 minutes behind time. So pretty much, if he's walking somewhere and he sees a kid with a balloon, he says something, whatever, if something bad happens, but it doesn't happen yet. If he just feels it, he gets sent back 5 minutes in time, and then that whole thing will happen again. He see the kid talking and all that stuff, and pretty much what he has to do is he has to look around for that bad thing that's gonna happen, and he has to pretty much prevent it from happening. And he said himself that he actually prevented a bunch of stuff from bad stuff happening, and he said he doesn't know how he got it. That's unexplained in the show, but I mean it's a good concept. It's a really, and the fact that it's not fighting, because I know me and Ryan mostly talk about shonen stuff. Are your Dragon Balls, your Naruto's, your Full Metal Brotherhoods. But this is for me. It's my first time watching an anime that's just mostly story driven, rather than just hey, you kill my race, I'm gonna go Super Saiyan. No, it's more story driven. It's crime. There's mystery. The characters are great. And there is gonna be spoilers, but just not yet. First, we're gonna talk about what we liked about the show, and then we'll get into spoilers. But so I'll give you a little head start before we start talking about spoilers. But I know there's one thing that Ryan really loves about this show, and Ryan, I'm pretty sure you know who I'm talking about.
Sataru's mom, best mom, because she's such a ride or die mom for her boy, and she has huge double D's, and there is a bath scene in episode 8. So I mean, what's not to love about her? You know, she's a ride or die mom. She's beautiful, and she takes baths. You know, like it's a perfect combo.
it's
You know,
it's it's funny because everyone I was watching this show, and when the mom first showed up in the first episode, I'm like, this guy Ryan's gonna like fall in love with his mom. I just know this guy is. And I remember after we finished watching, he was like, "Bro, the mom." I'm like, "Yep, I knew it. I fucking knew it. I know this guy too well, man."
dude.
But
As soon as I saw her, I was like, new waifu or what? And she cooks too.
yeah,
Like,
dude, she's an
what?
awesome cook, man.
Name one time you guys saw, like, I don't know, any other waifu cook.
Chi Chi.
Was it good? No. Chi Chi? Come on, she's not waifu.
Okay, whatever. But it's like what Ryan said. Besides of her really beautiful body and face, she is like a really dope mom. Like for sure, she's like top 10. Like she has to be on the top 10 of like the best anime moms because she's like there for her kid. She supports him. She knows him inside and out. Like she's an awesome mom. Like just to have, and it pretty much the show. I'll talk about that in spoilers, but yeah, just in general, this like the mom is really dope, and for me, the thing that pulled me into the show was pretty much the first time the whole thing that he calls a revival. Like when he gets set back in 5 minutes of time, he calls it a revival. So seeing that play out for the first time is what really caught my attention, like from the spot. And when it happened, I'm like, oh shit, that's a really good concept. And like, it keeps going on through the whole show, and it's pretty cool the way he uses it. Um, and like I said, also the characters are really memorable. Like a lot of the characters are super dope. Like of course, like the main character Taro has huge development within like the second episode already. Like his development as a character, being a shy dude, grows, and he's more of a talkative, and he's not afraid to speak to people because he was a shy kid. So like just from the first two episodes, they already showed him great development just off the bat. I know you have a different of what caught you of the show. What was it?
So, yeah, so what kind of caught me right away is I didn't read the description, and like Leo said, Leo started watching the show before I did, so he didn't tell me anything about it. He's just like, hey, we're gonna watch Erased. So I was like, okay, let's watch it. It's only 12 episodes. What really got me first is the connection that, as like a creator, like if you create anything, if you create art, if you write books, if you write comics, if you create YouTube, you leave like a piece of yourself in all of your work. And because Sitaru had this like lost memory pretty much, or this lost experience as a child, he can't really put himself into his work. And so he's a manga artist. And so what the, I guess, the producer or the editor, what he's saying, like, yeah, you don't have any pieces of yourself in it. These are just words on a paper. They're not really you or what you're trying to write. And so for me, I instantly vibed with that. I was like, okay, for sure. Like, I understand that you have to leave a piece of yourself in all of your work. And then he, like, he fails at becoming a manga artist, and you're like, man, like, this guy's a loser. Like, I thought it was gonna be his like success and how he's like coping with it because it's called a race. But then when you think this guy sucks because he's not a mangaka, he's single. I mean, he works at a pizza delivery, parlor. I'm like, this guy is whack. He freaking goes back in time and saves a little boy. And I'm like, and the first time that you utilized revival, I was like, yo, like, this was really well done. Like, this is a good set. Like, this is a good way to introduce us to his ability. And it's not like it tells him, like, what's wrong. He has to find it, like, figure it out. He has to be aware of his surroundings, like what's going on? Like, look around, try to find what's wrong, or something like that. And I was like, dang, this is cool. And when he kind of goes back in time, it leaves you to the point where you're trying to figure out, like, man, what is wrong? Like what's happening? But my favorite time in Revival is when he uses it the second time outside the supermarket, where they kind of introduce like the overall arc of the whole story.
Yeah. And I know I've talked to a few people about it already, and a lot of people are not found with the ending. And I know you don't like the ending either, but we'll get that later. I'm just pointing out that a lot of people don't like the ending. So if you're a huge fan of like great shows having a great ending, this one might disappoint you. I mean, it didn't bother me at all. Like I'm like, yeah, it didn't bother me, but I could see why it would bother people and why they would not like the ending. Me personally, I'm okay, it's a good ending. Whatever. Like it could have, they for sure could have done it better. I know, I would admit that, but I could see why people would really dislike this ending, and I know you hated the ending.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and say that this is the perfect, anime, but there's a lot of things I liked about it, and there's things I really think they could have done better, and well, we can just get to those points when we get there, but like, there's definitely things I think they could have done a lot better, you know?
Yeah. And even though he's like a very shy guy in the first episode, like he plays like off well with his coworkers and his mom. Like there's like a little thing that happens in the show where pretty much like I said, the mom knows her kid inside out, which all moms should, and every time, like, let's say if he does something, the mom like already kind of points it out, or she'll say it before he even thinks about saying it. And there's a little funny quirk that happens in the show where he goes like "witch." It's like a pretty funny little, yeah, like it happens with the whole show. So like this is a really dark anime show. It's dark. It's sad. There's funny moments. There's happy moments. There's moments that make you cry. So this show pretty much throws every kind of emotion at you. So this is pretty much like an all around really good show for pretty much any kind of emotions. So one episode you could be very happy for him. Next episode you'd be crying like a little bitch. Next episode you could be pissed. Next episode you confused. Like there's a bunch of shit that gets thrown at you in the show, which I think is the reason why it's a really good show and it does it well. Now speaking of that, I believe that's all we could talk about. That's non spoilers. So
Well, we can talk about, like, first of all, without any spoilers. Well, the things that the show does very well is they develop Sitaru extremely well. Like, he doesn't do anything that you feel is undeserving, because he has he just constantly is developing and trying to save people and become a better person. Another thing it does very well is comedy. Like Leo said, with the little quirks, like "witch." There's a bunch of other ones that I think are hilarious. Like when they talk about like, is it spoilers to say he becomes a kid?
yeah, see, that's what I was kind of thinking about. So yeah, fuck it. Spoilers. Yes. Okay. So spoilers is gonna happen, or actually, it does happen when he's an adult too. Well, pretty much where he'll say something in his mind, but then he'll say it out loud, and then he does that a lot throughout the whole show. And he's like, I said it out loud, didn't I? So it just happens. We'll come back to that right now too. But so I think that's all we can end with, just like non spoiler stuff. So since you already fucking mentioned one of them, so spoilers now. So if you want to see the show free, like no spoilers, then click away. We'll go watch it now. In the ending of the first episode, like so the mom and the son had they had their little day, and then he went to go walk his coworker home. I think is what happened, and then like the mom was there. She walked in the house and she was making, or
No,
she
he
just
was at work.
Oh yeah, she was at work. Yeah, and then she came in, and pretty much the main killer of the story comes in and kills her. With the kitchen knife, stabs her in the back, and that sets the events pretty much of the whole show. So pretty much when Satoru comes in and sees his mom, he grabs her, and of course he has blood all over his hand, and then he freaked out. And then as he freaked out, he fell back, and his neighbor saw him with just the blood, and she screamed, called the cops, ran out. And the one thing that he messed up on was that he um, reacted, but like badly. So he ran. He was hiding. So that's what made him a prime suspect. And before, like as he was running from the cops, he fell over a ledge, and then as soon as he hits the floor, he wakes up. I believe it's 18 years earlier, and he's a kid back in fifth grade or sixth grade, or where he was at. And that's pretty much the whole twist of the show. So this is pretty much 80% of the show as just him as a kid. And like I said, like just from the second episode, he already has development. Like what Ryan was saying, he has huge development pretty much throughout the whole show. The second episode is pretty much what started his development right away, like from the bat. Like when he was in class, he was freaked out. He didn't know, so he's like, screw that, I'm going home. And as he was going home, he's like it goes slow motion. And he run past by a girl that has been murdered around that time, and pretty much the whole show is centered around her and him. Not as a couple. I know a lot of people hate that shit, but the whole point of the story is pretty much him trying to save her life because she got her life taken away at that age, which I think it was 10. So pretty much the whole show is just him trying to stop that from happening, and pretty much like when he goes home and then he thinks it's a dream, and then he goes home and then his mom's there, and of course that first part already made me cry because the fact that he saw his mom dead, and then he's a kid and he sees her walk in the house and she's like, oh hey kid, what are you doing? And he starts crying. I'm like, that shit fucking got me. I'm like, dude, it's gotta be sad as fuck just to see your mom get murdered, and then you see her as a kid back like in the past, and you just see your mom again, and like that shit's sad to me.
So what I thought they did very well is, so I feel like everyone will do the same thing. I immediately got attached to the mom just for her to die in the first episode, and I was so devastated. I thought she wasn't going to be in the rest of the show, but thank God they did the whole time travel thing, and he goes back and he gets to see his mom. One of my favorite lines throughout the whole show is like, hey mom, you only need to take one train to get there, not two. And she's like, I wonder what that means. And like when before the mom died, she like told him that, like asked him like, hey, do I need to take two trains to get to this place or one? And he was like, oh, you only need to take one. And then she died. That was like the last thing he said to her. And then when he saw in the future, right before he went and did some like kind of sketchy shit, he was like, hey mom, you only need to take one train. Just remember that. And she was like, and she thought about that for so long, and I was like, that hurt me so much. I was like, I'm sorry, you just need to take one.
Yeah, and I did forget to mention in the beginning of the first episode, the I guess kidnaps are happening around. So like how I was saying, like back when he was a kid, there was 3 kidnaps that happened around that time when he was a kid, and then in the first episode when they're adults and in the present, the mom was telling him, "Oh, it's happening. Do you remember that?" And he's like, "Remember what?" And she's like, "Oh, I was like honestly," she said, "I won't be surprised if you didn't remember it because me and the whole neighborhood thought it was better if you kids just forgot about it." And she didn't tell him, but pretty much what she meant was there was 3 kidnaps that happened. It was 3 little girls, and they were kidnapped and they were murdered, and pretty much, the reason why Sotaro kind of forgot about it is because there was he could have saved the main girl that's part of the story that he's trying to save. He could have saved her because she was at the park by herself, and he saw her and he was about to scream her name, hey, I'll walk you home, but he kind of hesitated and then walked away, and then she got murdered, and then he blamed himself like since I don't know how many years, but he kept blaming himself that it was his fault she died. He kept crying. He felt like it for sure. It scarred him. I'm pretty sure that's what made him like that serious character. And like in the first beginning of the show, he was all serious. I think that's what made him like that, and pretty much
it kind of ruined his innocence if you really think about it, because he saw the world in a way that he always wanted to be a hero, like because he wanted to be a manga writer, and the reason that what inspired him was anime and superheroes, so he wanted to be a hero like them. And so when he realized that he couldn't save that girl, or he could have saved that girl and he didn't, it kind of took away his innocence, and that's when he became this like broken, serious character who doesn't really enjoy life.
Yeah. And pretty much like when I said when he was running home as a kid in the second episode, and he goes slow motion, and it passes by a girl in slow motion. That's the girl that pretty much is like I said based around of, and that's when we got murdered. Like the first victim that happened pretty much, and that's pretty much the whole show is based off. Is him trying to fix like he thinks like, oh, I was sent here for a reason. Like I think I had to change the future. So like pretty much like 80% of this arc is pretty much him just trying to make friends with her, trying to hang out there as much as he can. Um, and then introducing her to his friends, and like, even his friends are like, hey, like you're, oh no, not his friends. There's one guy who got accused of the murders, and he was like a 25-year-old dude, very, he's a has a warm heart. He's like a chill dude, and they think he did it because he would always be outside late at night, and she got kidnapped around the same time that he was out late at night. So he was a prime suspect, and he was in jail, and he was pretty much there even till this day when Satoru was 29 years old. And he even told him as a, hey Satoru, it's like you've been acting pretty, like you have we have like a lot more courage, and you talk more. And so he like he knew it, and that's already from the start. Like from being a shy kid at first, and then he went back in time, and he has the chance to rewrite the future, which I think a lot of us will be like love to have, is go back in time and do a lot of the stuff differently. And that's what pretty much this guy Satoru has. He has that power to change and pretty much do something differently for once. And that's pretty much the whole show right there. And what's cool is because there is times when, as he's trying to help her out, he's seeing the same thing that he already saw when he was a kid, like for the first time. So he's like, shit, am I even changing the future? Is it, I'm like, or is it still just replaying itself? And of course, the spoiler. So like, she does end up dying again, but not on the date that she died originally. She died 2 days after. So like, as soon as he found that out, then he says, "Oh, like I could change the future. He could do it." And it's
Yeah,
fucking crazy.
what I really like, what I really like is that he realized that he had to change to actually save her. Like, do you remember the scene where they're ice skating?
Yes.
They have the race, and there's like the hockey. He goes against the hockey player, and he like almost beats him, but then he's like, no, he worked harder. He should have it, and then he loses. And like, I think that for him as a character, that was a big point, because he realized that if he wanted to change this girl's future, he had to change himself. He couldn't just like only change things about her or around her. He had to change himself and have his friends help, because if he didn't, then it wasn't going to work.
Yep, that's and it's pretty cool. One thing that I did like that I forgot to mention was the way that the kids act like kids. That was a huge thing that actually caught my attention as well. Like the Arthur wrote such a very convincing like school. Like every kid acts like a kid. And then Sataro's in a group where like pretty much it could be a relatable group. Like there's the tough guy jock in the group. There's the gamer dude who's a nerd. There's that one cool dude who's clever and smart. There's the that one other dude that's just there supporting you guys, and then there's like the main character. So I did like the Arthur on his take on how like his like elementary was, and he did a very super dope job on kids acting like kids, which I enjoyed a lot.
Yeah, and on a further note of his writing, I think the villain, what he did very well is he kind of pulled like a Jaws. That, like, to go on a little rant, the movie Jaws, the shark was broken for half of that movie, so they never showed him. And so they're left this like moment of mystery to you wonder what he looked like, and who he was, or what he looked like, and all this other stuff. And that can translate into Erased, in that the kidnapper, they never really show you what he looks like. They give you like glimpses, kind of, but it lets you wonder like who he is and what he looks like. One thing they focus on is the eyes, like his eyes. And what they do really well is they don't give one character those eyes. It's not like, oh, it's that guy because he has the eyes.
Yeah,
Every
speaking yeah,
a
so speaking of the eyes, I now that you mentioned that, like, this show does very well on, like, making you see something differently. So you'll think something, but then as soon as it gets revealed, you're like, oh shit, I'm wrong. Or if you think, oh shit, this never happened, and then like then the show just changes that. So it does throw your mind around, and it's really dope. And like that's like what Ryan was saying, that the first thing you see, or the first trait you see of the villain, he has red eyes, like bright red eyes. It's the first trait you see. And then when he goes back in time, you see at least three characters with the same red eyes. So you're thrown off like, yo, who the fuck is the villain? Who's this? And the main villain, well, I won't spoil it yet, but the main villain, you see him throughout the show, and he doesn't have the red eyes. Like, it's dark, so you rarely see him like the bright red eyes, which is really also like a dope thing of what the author did to try to change your mind on, like, hey, this is the killer, but I'm not gonna give him that trait, because if I do give him that trait, then you'll know for sure that's the guy.
And did you notice that whenever the main character was gonna do some really like towards the end of the season, like Satoru has to do some really like shady stuff to help the girl, and his eyes turned red when he did that. Did you notice that?
Oh, I didn't notice that. Let's actually rewatch
Like
that.
when he goes to push the the lady down the stairs, his eyes are red.
I actually didn't
And
notice
so
that.
I thought that was a really good parallel because it showing you how willing he was to like to defeat the bad guy, to save the girl, that he was willing to compromise his integrity. But thank God his friend, who's all of his friends were amazing friends. They always had his back, and they brought him back to the world. That he like, hey, don't do this because then you won't be a hero. You'll be just like him. You'll be a villain. And I was like, that's so like the writing is so good.
Yeah, the writing is good, and also, I haven't seen the sub, but the dub does a really good job, which kind of
Yeah,
pisses me off a little, because what is it called? Aniplex, like,
Emily Bullock.
yeah, like, and like they're a good dub studio, but for some reason they just can't get Demon Slayer right. It just pisses me off. But going off track right there, because like I've seen that one, which is really good dub, and I've seen Blue Exorcist, which is pretty good dub too. But we'll talk about that later. But yeah, like, it just pisses me off that Demon Slayer doesn't have a good dub and shit. But Satara has a really sick ass voice. It's like it fits him. Also, I want to
Dude,
point
so
out,
does the villain.
huh?
So does the villain,
Yeah,
the bad guy, the
the
killer.
main villain
He
also.
has
Oh, dude.
such a good
Yeah,
good
the main
voice.
villain has a really good dub voice. Like, it fits the character super perfect. Like, to the point where you believe like this guy could exist, because like the voice matches just like the look of the guy like super well, you know, and that's what the show is just amazing, dude. Honestly.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, I mean we're really praising this show because it's really good for a 12 episode run, but it is not perfect. And Leo, do you have anything that bugged you about the show? Because I have a few.
Let's see. Well, I mean, honestly, so huge spoiler. He does end up saving the girl's life. Um, Actually, hold on. Before we say dislikes, I want to say like our likes about it. I do like, probably one of my favorite scenes of the whole show was the point where, so the main villain knows who Sutaro is now. So they're driving in the car, and the main villain was saying like, I was trying to kill these three girls, but for some reason you're always right there. You're always stopping my plans. And like, when we were at the hockey game and I saw you go for her to save her, like, that's when I knew that it's not a coincidence. Like, something is up. It was like, something about me and about my king's about to do, that I'm curious of what you know. And there's a point where he was pretty much about to murder him. Like, the seatbelt was like, I think he made it where the seatbelt is like unclickable. Like, as soon as you click it in, it's like locked. And he put a basketball on the gas and pretty much made the car pretty much drown while Sotaro was in there as a kid, getting trapped. And one of my favorite parts that gave me chills was as he was getting synced in, and before he fully goes in, the bad guy's walking away and he goes, "I know your future!" And like the guy, he stops, kind of looks back at him, and was kind of like with a confused face, like what? And then like it ends there, and then that's when he wakes up, years later in a coma. That's one of my favorite scenes in the whole show. Like, did you like that scene, Ryan?
I did, and I loved the reveal about who the villain actually is. I love that reveal. They did it so well. He was It's a boy, so spoiler, I guess, but you kind of know it's a male the whole time. Um, he was a character that you liked, and you always had a suspicious feeling about him, but you didn't want it to be him because he was really likable. So when it turns out that it is him, it hurt. I was like, man, like I would have given anything for it not to be this guy because I like him so much.
Yeah.
It's like for me, it was like when we find out, well, when everyone else found out that he was the bad guy, I was like, it felt for me, it felt like a character, like one of my favorite characters was dying, because that's essentially what it was. I was like, I know this doesn't end well for this character anymore, and I like him so much, so I was hoping he'd get a happy ending, but he doesn't.
Yeah, he did. But
But my favorite scene is actually the next episode when where we get like a background on the killer. Like they didn't have to do that, you know. They could have just been like, "Oh, he's a bad guy," and that's it.
yeah, but
But
then,
we
yeah,
actually we
they,
actually
they
do
give
get some
yeah like
information.
yeah like they give him like a full on backstory on why he kills, and like it kind of like I wasn't expecting it either. Like it just begins with him telling his backstory why he kills. And I'm like, honestly, we didn't need that, but I'm glad that we saw that.
Yeah, it has like one of my favorite lines, like because he talks about how like this girl when he was in grade school, this girl had two hamsters and they created babies, and he took the hamster babies and filled up a wine glass full of water, and dropped all the babies in, and watched them drown. But he left, and he came back, and there was only one hamster baby alive, and he kept it and took care of it and raised it pretty much. And he was like, I named it Spice. And then he was like, talks about a story that he heard, and then he goes, but that's why I kept you alive, Sataru. You're my spice. I was like, oh my god, that's so twisted and like demented, and it works with their character dynamic. Like that whole scene was just like so perfect to me, where I was like, it defines like their whole dynamic together, and it's said from the villain's perspective.
Yeah. And then also one thing I wanted, I want to rewatch this show because one of the things that the main villain does is when he's driving, he taps his finger on the wheel, like he taps his finger like constantly, and I want to rewatch it to see if he does it in any of the scenes that he's in, like if he's tapping his finger, because if he does that, then like they were giving us hints to fucking begin, like even the beginning of the opening, they give us a hint, but it's only shown for a split second in the opening, and I want to see if he does tap his finger like at all, like before he reveals he's the killer of the show. And like if I ever watch this shit and he's tapping his freaking finger, dude, I'm gonna be like, wow, dude, storytelling at its freaking finest. Like
Yeah,
the perfect of
eh,
show don't tell.
yeah. They left bread crumbs instead of giving us the whole loaf.
Mm-hmm. Correct. So drink my water real quick. So I guess dislike about this show, dude. That's a really hard one to say.
I got them. I got them lined up and ready to go.
I bet you do, man. I bet you do. Um, I guess I kind of cause I do. I mean, because it works, I can see why it works, but I don't like the. Oh, he wants to become a manga artist, whatever the manga, and he ends up achieving his dream. He becomes something better. Like I kind of like um shows or movies where the character wants to do something in the beginning, but then towards the end it just changes to something different, and he does like a whole different thing instead of fucking like doing what he was doing from the beginning. Like I like because like it shows you like hey, that's not what I needed. This is what I needed, and they change themselves and like the whole thing. So like when I saw he was, he's like an actual, he owns his own studios or his own publish, he's like the main boss of his own manga, studio. I'm like, I guess that's cool, I guess, but I kind of wish he went somewhere else since he has so much knowledge, like who knows if he can still use, the revival, because like the last scene in the movie, so every time a revival happens, you see a blue butterfly like fly like nearby, and that's when a revival happens. So in the beginning of the last scene, a butterfly shows up, but nothing. He doesn't get sent back. Like I could have wished he could have used it more to expand his knowledge. Like think about it. If he went back even further, back to the times to learn more, culture about people. Like he could have been one of the most smartest people alive. Like in his present. But and then also I'm pretty sure it's on your list too, but I didn't like that the girl he saved, which is I think her name is Koya or Koya, something like that, ends up with one of his best friends instead of him. And I'm like, wow, that's a huge slap to the face. Like, yeah, you saved my life. I'm still gonna sleep with your friend instead though, and have a kid with him.
Yeah.
But I think that's all I have for my dislikes. There's not, like I said, there's not much I dislike about the show. Like for me, it's almost close to perfection, but of course, there's its flaws. But since you have your list lined up, let's hear it, Ryan.
Okay, my biggest issue with the show, and this is just, uh, I wouldn't. It's something I'm good at. Like I'm good at mystery shows and stuff like that. But like I said, the villain was doing great. They leave breadcrumbs, but I figured it out. Episode 3. Like I was like, this is the bad guy, and maybe even sooner before that. Like because my thing was what they did good is the eyes. The eyes like there's a bunch of characters with the same eye color and the same eye shape as the killer. But the one thing they didn't change, and I wish to God they did, was they didn't change what the fuck he was wearing. So there's only one dickhead in a suit in the whole show.
Yeah, I did notice that. And the thing was,
And I was like,
and it was funny
I
because
was like,
like I was
it's
watching
him.
it. Yeah, because I was watching it with one of my friends, and since I already knew the story. I'm just rewatching just like the first like 3 episodes, and there's a part, I think in episode 2, or yeah, I think 2 or 3, I forget which one it was, but like he's talking to like the manager of the place that Sotaro works in. He's talking to the manager, and it's the guy in a suit. And as he's talking, I'm like, dude, he has the exact same voice as the guy you see when Sotaro was a kid, who's like the main killer. I'm like, how the fuck didn't I catch that first? Like, it's the same fucking voice. Like, I didn't catch that like at first, man. I'm just stupid.
Yeah, and I like the character, but I never I really like the character. I really like that dynamic, and I think the reason that made me like it so much is because I saw what the main character was doing by attaching himself to this character. So, and I already at this point had figured out that he's the villain. So I knew that it was gonna lead to good storytelling at the end. Like it was gonna be like that Darth Vader kind of moment, like Luke, I'm your father kind of thing. But I never the mystery was taken out of it. It was more not it wasn't me waiting for them to reveal who the killer was. It was more me waiting to find out how they found out. Like I knew it episode as basically as soon as the character was introduced in whatever episode I went, there's the bad guy. Right there. And he's even in the opening trailer in the opening twice. And there's kind of like two villains of the show, and the main villain is right next to the other villain in the opening, and I was like, come on guys, like that's the bad guy. I mean, they try their best to throw you off his trail, but
But yeah,
for me it was just I always knew.
but that's a staple of anime. Their openings spoil everything. It's very rare to see an anime opening that doesn't spoil anything. Cowboy Bebop, but we're not gonna get there. But like, yeah, it's like that's a staple in anime where the opening pretty much spoils the either the whole show or like the main arc that's going on. That's what happens.
But another problem I had is episode 1 through 9 are about saving the first victim, right? That's cool. My problem with that though is there's only 12 episodes. And so you spend 9 episodes developing this girl and her feelings towards the main character, her feelings towards the main character's mom group with the killer. But then you don't finish it with her arc. You finish it, which in a way kind of felt really rushed to me. Like the ending never felt like it was the proper conclusion. We get a whole lot of convoluted like time travel stuff with the last 2 episodes. Episode 10 is uh, really felt like a filler episode to me up until the very end of the episode where we have Leo's like favorite scene in the whole show with the I know your future. But it like that, and the bummer part about episode 10 feeling like the filler is it's the episode where the killer's identity gets revealed. You get the first legit face to face like detective versus villain conversation, and it didn't feel impactful really at all. And this face to face meeting happens for like 5 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's the coma arc, and it just never gives you moments to sit down and really feel the emotion and the weight that the killer just let onto the audience really, and onto the main character. Like we don't get to see how we don't ever get to see how the main character deals with the fact that pretty much his father figure was trying to kill his friends. And so that was kind of like a really bummer for me. I was hoping we'd find out like halfway through the show, episode 6, and we could kind of see how he reacts to it. But we wait till all the way episode 10 out of 12, and then we skip to a completely different time, which is almost like a completely different story because the main character at this point is so different from how he started and so different from that last episode. So you never really get to feel the good versus evil, or the main character versus the villain like conflict. It's just kind of like, oh, here's the reveal. Oh, it's over. You know? And that was a
Mm-hmm.
real bummer for me, considering how well written episode 1 through 9 are.
Yeah, it's pretty much
Like,
like Naruto, dude. Naruto was solid. Shippuden came, just got shot on. But we'll talk about Naruto.
don't get me started, dude. Yeah.
So
The audience knows how I can ramble.
so pretty much what Ryan means about like episode 10 being a filler is because, like I said, there's 3 girls that got murdered. So I thought, like, as the show was going on, I'm like, okay, so it's based around saving, the main girl Koyo. What about the other 2? Like, is he gonna say that? Does he forgot about the other 2, or like what happened? And then episode 10 pretty much rushes him saving those 2 like off the bat, like easy. But then again, I could kind of see why that makes sense, because since Koyo was more of a shy and she was more of a closed character, she wouldn't want to talk to anyone. She had no friends. She was abused, so she had nothing. Those 2 other kids are more open to talk to, like they'll speak to you if you talk to them, they'll listen, they'll hear you out. And since one of them was already his friend, it was easy for him to save him, like, her. No spoiler, by the way, Ryan, don't say anything. And the other chick who I think was like an upper grade above them. So since they're both more talkative and more open, I could see why it's more faster. But I still would have been cool if 1 through 5 was about the main chick Koyo, and then as like 5 through 10, you mix in the other 2 in there as well, so they have more of a development, just like Koyo does.
And that one of the girls being his friend felt so cheap to me that his solution was just keep hanging out, you know? Like, because he spent so much time and care with the first girl. Like, he was walking her home, he was like waking up early to walk her to school. But then his friend, he has dinner with her and was like, okay, see you tomorrow. Like, the killer could have kidnapped him then. It's like 8 o'clock at night, and you're just like, all right, see you later, peace. You know, like it kind of felt like a step back, in my opinion, for his character, because he spent so much time and care And to this first girl, she's gone, and he's happy that she's safe. But the other two girls, he's kind of like, yeah, fuck it, you know. Like it really did. It did, in my opinion. It really felt for me like he was like, ah, fuck it, I already saved one of them. One's good enough for me.
Yeah, I can see. Do you have anything else you disliked about the show?
No, that's pretty much it. I mean, like I said, the first 1 through 9, amazing. 10, 11, 12, really had a problem with. Oh, and actually, I do have one more thing. The girl, his coworker that they introduced in the beginning, she is the only, in my opinion, irrelevant character in the whole show.
I can
Because
kind of, yeah, I can see that.
they really shoehorn her in on everything. Like, she talks about her dad, like, divorcing her mother and leaving his town over a candy bar, and how she just wished someone would have believed in him, and that's why he believes uh, in the main character. And that line echoes through his head the whole show, and it's so annoying because I'm like, this girl is in a collective of these 25-minute episodes that are 12 25-minute episodes. She is in a collective of probably less than 10 minutes, and they make her such a big deal, and it is so annoying. I'm like, she is not important. Why are you guys forcing this? And then at the end, they kind of like set the main character and her up to be together instead of the main character and the girl, which is a real annoying thing because I'm like, this man spent 9 episodes trying to save her. This girl's in 3 episodes for like 4 minutes.
But
Like,
like, but
and
then
you
again,
want
like she did have
him
a
to marry
huge,
her?
but she did have a huge moment with them where like pretty much when Totaro was like, "Yo, like, you don't even know who I am, and you believe me that I didn't kill my mom." And she's like, "Well, yeah, because I see the way you and your mom are. Like, there's no way you could have killed her, you know." And like she has like a little mini arc, like a backstory of her with her dad and everything that happened. And that's one of the huge reasons why she strongly believes that Satoru is like innocent, which he is. But like I could kind of see why like at first, because I know at first he's like, whatever, she's annoying, she's an annoying ass chick, I don't want anything to be with her. But then I think as he was a kid, and you know everything that's been going on, like he kind of like thought about him, like, you know what, like I'm taking it for granted, you know, like she's a very dope girl, she believes in me, you know, she's like she's there for me. And like she even like cried down when I guess when the cops found Satoru, like under the, like when they found him and he arrested him, and she was like crying her fucking like eyes out, like, I'm sorry, like I didn't tell my promise, you know, like I didn't do anything. So like I mean I guess I didn't think she was a bother for me.
I did. I
I
felt exactly the same way Satoru did at the beginning of the show, the entire length of the show. I was like, every time she came on screen, I was like, oh my god. I was like, Sakura, you useless ass, get off the screen.
All right, so from 0 to 10, my rating of the show will be a 9 out of 10. So like highly recommended. Like I do tell people like, oh, like I highly suggest watching this show, but just letting you know, it's no fighting, it's no shonen, it's purely storytelling, mystery, crime, drama. But I was like, if you want to get into that, like I said, I've never ever seen, you know, that kind of anime until Erased, and now I want to see more, and I've added way more to my list, and I would probably show them this show like to get into this kind of genre. I'm like, yeah, I mean, like I said, I haven't watched any other ones, so I probably would like other ones better than Erased. But as of right now, I highly recommend Erased. So 9 out of 10 for me.
Um, as far as recommendations go, I think this show is amazing to recommend to people who are just getting into anime. People who are longtime veterans can watch it, and it's a good show. A solid plot for 90% of the show. For me, though, there are some glaring things that really bothered me. So I'm going to go a 7.5 to 8 out of 10 for me.
I was not expecting that. Wow, that's
All right.
pretty low rating, but yo, Ryan, roll this outro, dude.
Not really. It's not that low. But once again, guys, this has been the Gamer and the Weeb podcast, the only podcast that helps Luffy finds the One Piece so people can stop talking about it. signing off.